Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai. And actually, it is good morning to today's guest, Yuta Hasumi, who is currently in London in the UK, in
Hi,
SW3,
Jennifer.
according to your webpage, is correct?
Yes.
Very nice,
Hello,
nice part of
everyone.
town. And yeah, I'm in the evening here in Tokyo, and I'm so glad that we managed to have this because Yuta's told me about his holiday plans, and I was like, oh no, my eyes are running, and I'm all sniffly. Maybe I've got some kind of allergies. Hopefully, not like that mysterious virus is going around. No fever, so I think I'm okay. But I'm so glad that we got this chance to talk today. Because I've known you, Yuta, for quite a few years, although you did move to the UK in 2018, but we had kind of come across each other in various diversity and inclusion events around Tokyo. And we were just talking before we started the recording of various mutual friends who've also been guests on this podcast. So David Sweet and Zain Zambalan and Robin Lewis, and who else do we have? Sarah Liu, who recommended you. So yeah, our paths have crossed, and I'm so glad that you are here to talk today. And Sarah is the reason that we are speaking. So Sarah was a guest on episode 3, 4. Oh, I never do my research properly and never have my notes. I'm a terrible podcast host, but my passion is there. And I was about episode maybe 15 of the podcast, and I looked at the guest list and I went, okay, I've got a lot of non-Japanese people talking about Ikigai. That might be an issue. I've got a lot of women talking about Ikigai. Okay, that's quite good. But what is really glaringly obvious in my lineup is a lack of Japanese men. So this made me think of 2 questions. So one is my own trusted circle, my own network not being diverse enough, and I don't have enough Japanese men like which is crazy, living in Japan, so homework for myself. And then the other point was thinking, is it that Japanese men aren't allowed to speak openly about their Ikigai? And so when Sarah recommended you, Yuta, and your diversity and inclusion consultancy running from the UK now is called Ikigai Authentic, I thought this will work. This will work very well. But before we get into that, perhaps you could tell me just a little bit about what you're doing now in the UK, about your business, about Ikigai Authentic. Do a little introduction of yourself for the listeners.
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. I'm Yuta Hasumi. It's so great to be here with all of you. Jennifer made a really, really interesting point because we were talking about who, I know from like Jennifer's, YouTube speakers. I'm one of the big fan of like her, your YouTube, Jennifer. Then I was thinking, we were chatting. Okay, I know Robin, I know Henry, and I know Dane, but all of them are men. So probably my network is not diverse enough. So that's why I'm so delighted to share my perspectives today as well. I'll do my best. Also, I really agree with you, Jennifer, because recently, I have had lots of like a generation project. And so, now companies are facing quite serious, generational gap. So we are always discussing how to bridge the generational gap to unleash the generational synergy. So at the time, many data shows that, Generation Y, quite, millennial generation, the very first generation to talk about openly, our Ikigai in public. The previous generations like baby boomers and Generation X are not so open about it. So it's also a really interesting topic, I think. And so my work is I have my own company running like global like diversity and equity and inclusion consulting firm. So we are more like advising the companies how to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion for business objectives. My passion as my ikigai at in my career more focused on why diversity and inclusion matters to business.
Mm. And do you have a quick answer you can tell in case anybody wants to find out? I don't want to go into your whole program, but why does it matter for you? What drives you?
For the why D&I matters to business, because this is probably more about my responsibility and mission, because there are lots of great persons with mission, and so person more like activists in the society to raise awareness of diversity and inclusion. And also I feel like, probably that's not my role. I have passion about diversity and inclusion, but because of my career, I have been doing diversity and inclusion in business for last 12 years.
Yeah.
Then I'm more comfortable to discuss how we can leverage our own diversity for like the business objectives. Then I can involve more people in the workplace with diversity, more like the inclusion in the workplace.
Right.
Then like I found myself, this is the field I can more contributing to.
Yeah, and of course your company name is Ikigai Authentic, right?
That's right.
So you're bringing together that authenticity that comes, its ability to be authentic is a kind of hallmark of an inclusive organization or inclusive society, along with the Ikigai. And I'm just going to read this off your website. The mission is creating workplaces worth working at and a society worth living in, a society that offers Ikigai. So tell me more about that. Like, when will we know we are in this society that offers Ikigai?
Right. Thank you for asking. So first, my own Ikigai is to be authentic myself. And then like my mission is to build a space for others where everyone is authentic and thriving and performing 100%. So when I was driving diversity and inclusion in the organization, I realized probably the goal and also direction of driving diversity in business is more about the organization, where everyone can be authentic and so fully themselves without any restriction, regardless of like our background, culture, gender, sexual orientation, or race. So that's why I thought, authenticity is quite aligned with people's ikigai. That's why I took like the two words ikigai and authentic in my company's name.
That's wonderful. And when it comes to, it's kind of back to that first point when I said maybe Japanese men aren't allowed to be authentically talking about their ikigai. What do you see happens to an individual? And this could be in your own personal story or things that you've noticed in your work. What do you see happens at the individual level when people are able to be authentic, to express their ikigai, like how they want to be, how they want to show up in the world? What happens at the individual level?
I think, especially the society in Japan has quite strong like peer pressure. We always have to be treated like, men should be in this way, and so women should be in that way, or Japanese as non-Japanese. And so I still growing, but day to day. But I discovered my Ikigai when I stopped stretching myself too much, and so kind of got out of the social pressure, because I was grown up in my traditional Japanese family,
Right.
and so my father was a police officer, and so
Oh.
my mother was a housewife. So to the place where I was raised is more like man is a breadwinner, and so women is more like the
Yeah,
house carer.
homemaker, housewife,
Yeah,
Sengoshufu.
housewife.
It's like a professional housewife, right?
Yeah, and also I was also educated like, okay, so you are a Japanese man, you have to be like that. You shouldn't do that. Then, at the time, I thought that is more like the common sense atarimae. But just I was I couldn't be open to my parents, but I was a little bit skeptical. Like, is it right? But it's a little bit different from what I felt. But just I thought that we have to do that way, and so I have been following that.
Right. Actually, you reminded me of a conversation I had with Dr. Akihiro Hasegawa, who is an Ikigai researcher here in Tokyo. And in the sort of Ikigai model that he works with, and that's based on a lot of the work of Kamiya Mieko, he was talking about one of the sense of Ikigai is that feeling of self-actualization and feeling of who you are. And I think that's really aligned with what you're talking about, like, should I be like this? And I see you nodding. So tell me what's resonating there, Yuta.
Right. I think it's really important to build our self-confidence and self-esteem. I completely agree with him, because if we try to try to, how can I say, if we force ourselves to stay in the mainstream, then sometimes even we are losing our self-confidence eventually, because that's not fully authentic. Because for example, if you want to do A, but my based on my cultural background, my gender or generation, everybody has to choose B at the time. We have to force ourselves to lean on B at the time. It's quite stressful, consciously or unconsciously. Then eventually we lose. I wish I could be A, but just we have to do B. So probably I also had experience to doubt myself. Oh, I feel different from what other people think all the time. Then I feel like, am I weird, or like, am I strange? Then I lost a couple of my confidence.
Right. How did you get over that then? How did you shift to realize maybe you are weird and you are strange, but that's okay? That's where I'm sitting, that I am weird and right. I am strange, but that's okay.
That's interesting. I had a couple of aha moments, but basically I stopped stretching myself too much, and so try to be myself. Then, for example, like in the workplace, before I tried to do something important to the society, but I realized I am not in that phase yet. So now I am more focused on to influence and to coach and advise the communities and organizations and the people around me to be the better place for them to be fully authentic themselves.
Right.
This is much more my motivation, rather than always focusing on doing something big.
Got it. So and also maybe on your website, you use the Ikigai Venn diagram, and it's sort of thinking as well about like using your strengths and what you're good at. So not everyone is built to be an activist. I'm not built to be an activist, but I can use my experience working in corporate to talk to people in like I know what it's like. And I think you've also had the similar experience, right? Because you were in big corporate for how long? You were doing D&I work for 12 years, right?
I have been driving D&I in the corporation for 7 years.
7 years, right. So you're enough of an insider that if you go to a blue chip company, you can talk about your experiences, and it feels like, okay, Yuta kind of understands the reality of what we're dealing with, our internal politics and our stakeholders and all the daily pressures, not just kind of coming in saying, well, that's not how you should do things. Yeah. You look like you were going to say something. Goes on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. Every company has different culture and so different politics and also, different people. So it's really important to admit it. And then that's why, I personally don't like telling more like what they should do, because then sometimes it's perceived as kind of social justice. Then that switch of people's mindset to change, because there are not so many people trying to be bad. Everybody is doing the right things, in belief. So that's why people don't like to be told. I don't like to be told, you are wrong, or like you should do that. So that's why, so from my approach is more to showcase, how we can leverage our own difference and strengths for more like the business reasons, what we have been doing day to day. Then, people realize, and so like different perspectives, different opinions, different way of thinking would work better for our responsibility in the workplace. Right. Then I feel more comfortable to follow that approach rather than, okay, we have to have diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, to help people to understand the business imperative and all of that other kind of discussion piece as well. Right. But obviously there came a point where you decided to leave corporate and set up your own business. I'm always very careful to not make all of my guests on this podcast be people who have left corporate and then have set up their own business and running small businesses or large businesses, because I believe that, Ikigai is showing up for us in many different ways in our lives. But that's one of the things that you did, presumably for a connection to your own Ikigai, and how you wanted to live your life. So what's that transition been like? That was 2018, and kind of where are you now in that mission?
Right. So first, so I left the corporation when I moved to the UK. At that time, I felt I took the big risk. Then, so after moving to the UK, honestly, I was looking for jobs in the market, but I couldn't find the right role for myself, because at the time it's really great time for me to think what I really want to do, but just it's not necessarily aligned with what is available in the job market. So I have been quite struggling for 6 months.
Right.
Then at that time, I talked to many people in my own network, what I should do. And at that time, I really, really appreciate my friends and also for my colleagues, asking me like, hey, if you have lots of free time, why don't you do this one? why don't you help me with the project? Then, I started working with many corporations, with many of my colleagues and the friends about, more like the helping like their organization to develop the inclusive HR policies, and also like deliver like some like the other workshop. Then it's getting closer to the full time. Then I think, oh, this is really great to work with, many stakeholders, many of my friends, many corporations. Then I I feel more fulfilled to kind of align myself with my own ikigai.
Right.
So then, I decided to uh, uh, build my own company. Then now here I am.
You are. Oh, I love that. That's just like such an organic story, right? It wasn't the big, like, I'm going to move to the UK and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to start this business and this is what it's going to be. It was like the reality of looking at the job market. I mean, so it was clear that you had an idea of what it was you wanted to do. And then you look around and go, these opportunities don't exist. So, and then people, trusted people, like keeping up that network, talking to people about what it is. And then I think what I took away from what you were taking, and maybe what you said, maybe I read too much into it, but it's going, you know what, you're really good at this and you have the skill set. Can you help me? And maybe you weren't always aware that that was like a marketable skill set that you could do on like a project basis or something like that as well. So friends and people around you can kind of shine a light on that skill set and make you go, oh, is that something the world needs? It's so easy for me to do these things, for example, right? I didn't realize people struggled with that. Sure, I can help you with that.
Yeah, you are definitely right. This is also about my, how can I say, my principle as well. Like my principle is honesty over niceness. So,
Honesty
when
over niceness. Tell me more.
yeah. So probably it's not necessarily nice, but just, I'm always honest. That's why, so for example, like that 6 months, many people helped me. On the other hand, many people left me.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
At that time, it's really great finding that, I have been working with my, company's name. I worked before. So this time, okay, so also the title, like, I was head of diversity and inclusion with a big, well-known organization. Then they said, oh, like, I want to work with you, I want to be a friend with you. But just all that kind of people left me. Also, sometimes, I'm very honest. That's why, I am good at providing solutions, but probably I'm not the best person to just show always like sympathy with people. When people approach me to ask for advice, I always try to, do the best I can do. But there's some people I know who just want to hear, something nice.
Yeah.
Then at the time, I am always honest. Then like everybody don't necessarily appreciate it. Then, many people said, oh, that's not what I expected from you. I just want you to listen to me. And I said, at the time, I really apologize because I didn't meet the expectation. But just, but at the same time, my principle is more like I have to be honest to people I care for, and then rather than always being nice. This is also kind of the principle I've developed during that transition.
Right. I think that's your authenticity showing through, right? That well, I'm not
Right.
just here to listen, and I'm not just here because me showing up is as a problem solver for you, and you brought this to me, so I'm going to tell you what I really think. I also think that's a really useful concept, what you shared about for listeners and viewers who are thinking of making changes. And I think that's a really interesting, but also quite heartbreaking, but also very true realization. So be ready that if your identity is very much tied up in, you might not realize your identity is so much tied up in that corporation or in that particular role. And so what you thought those relationships with people was based on was actually not authentic. It's a hard, I'm sort of like hearing myself speak. It's really heartbreaking, but maybe your experience, Yuta, and raising that is going to help people who go through some transition in their identity in the next, after listening to this podcast.
Right.
Yeah. Was there anything you think you could do, or you would advise someone, like how to hack that recovery? Because I feel like that could be really painful.
Right. So I would say it was also a very good opportunity for me to be selfish and pause worrying about what other people think. Because I realized I was so dragged into, I know what other people perceive about myself, which is out of control. Because, when we start trying to please people all the time, sometimes, we try to be nice to them, then also, other people have emotion, they have been up and down. So if they're in the up phase, it's easy to please them. But if they're struggling with something, then I try to please them. Sometimes it doesn't work because we cannot change people, we cannot control people's emotion. So that's how I centralized myself. Then okay, so probably I should focus more on myself, what I want to do, who I want to be with, and so where I want to go. Then as you said, it hurt, but just at the time I could become more honest. Then in the end, I feel more fulfilled in the life.
Yeah, so many things are coming into my mind as you're saying this, and I'm thinking about sometimes people say, oh, like, focusing on yourself and focusing on your own ikigai and like what makes you happy, what makes you feel authentic is really selfish. And how does that jive with Japanese culture? Because I thought Japanese culture was all about like being part of the group and focusing on the group. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Right. That's very true. So I think the boundary of D and I could be stretched out to the other people's boundary. If we start interfering or the invading in other people's boundary or like personal space, that's a limit. So until then, probably that's my experience. Probably we could stretch out to be ourselves, to unless we are not interfering other people's boundary or comfort. But in Japan, because of the kind of strong like social pressure, we don't realize, and so we try to live in the quite narrow personal boundary. This time it's quite difficult to align with where or like what we wish we could be.
Yeah.
So yeah, then also, like we discussed before this recording, it's really okay to admit, we are weird or we are strange. Also, we are always, part of minority depending on the communities.
Yeah. And I think that's like what sometimes strikes me, in the coaching work that I do, and I'm sure it comes up in your workshops as well, like how many people just feel so constrained, feel always weird, and that actually so many people feel weird, feel like they're the only one. And then as soon as you even like put a little tiny bit of like the lid comes off, and everyone is like, I'm nervous to use everyone. Many people are like, I feel the same. I felt like that too. I understand you. And it's just like, why do we not show this more? Why can't we talk about that? And so I feel, especially like what you shared about, the Japan perspective, wouldn't it be nice if everyone just stretched out a little bit more, took up a little bit more space? I think it's beautiful in Japan that people really do care about making other people comfortably. I think it's fabulous, but it also has a negative impact, right, on mental health and people's ability to feel icky every day. Yeah, from the icky part of Ikigai.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Japan is a beautiful country. I love where I am from them. So I couldn't be me today without my parents' education. Like they taught me very, very well how to appreciate people and so their gestures and so occasion. Also how to be accountable for whatever I have been committed to. So that is also kind of beauty of Japan. So being myself doesn't mean I deny what I learned. So based on that, for example, in the UK, people really appreciate me caring about others as well, and so they perceive that one as kind of Japan's DNA. And so like more like the attention to detail and try to read people's expectation. So that's it's not something everybody is equipped in the world.
Yeah. So sort of have gratitude and gratitude for that experience. And anyway, it is what it is. It's how you were raised, and take and same for me, coming from the country that you are now in now. There are parts of me that maybe will be unchanging. Not sure, maybe stiff upper lip for the British. Liking to talk to people at bus stops, that's not changed. I get more strange looks about it. Actually, it's totally not on the topic of, but if you could say something that you see in like the British DNA. I really hate this question when people ask me about it in Japan, so I'm kind of now embarrassed that I've asked it. But like, what is there anything that you notice that you go, oh, if like attention to detail is like a Japanese DNA and caring for the people is Japanese DNA? Do you have any observances from your time in the UK?
So how would you answer when people ask you what?
Do you know what? That's
British
actually scratch this question, because I was on some of David Sweet's podcast, and every question he asked, I'm like, don't make me answer questions like this. I hate answer questions like that. I really don't like having to choose. I hate having to be like, I'm basically saying, please be the token Japanese person, telling me about the UK. All you can talk about is your experiences. So now my learning is I hate it when people ask this question to me, so I'm not going to ask it to you. So we're not going to edit this. We're just going to show that learning in action. Brilliant. And great consulting there, Yuta. He wasn't nice. Did you notice, everyone? He was just honest. So how would you answer this question? So let me ask another question, which I always have on my board, which was from Matthew Doms, who was a previous guest as well. And he said, the question you should ask is, what's the question I should have asked you? So what's a question I haven't asked you yet, Yuta, that you would like me to ask you, and then you can answer? It's a very lazy podcaster's trick.
That's very Interesting question. Well, I think I really like that.
Yeah.
Anything. I'm going to say maybe how. Sorry, I'm thinking.
I can tell. Good. Take your time.
Right. Okay, so maybe like one of the question. So what has been difficult for me about integrating my Ikigai?
Yuta, what has been difficult for you about integrating your Ikigai? Please tell me. So smooth.
Thank
So
you
smooth.
for
Great interview.
articulating.
Thanks, man.
Quite. It has been difficult to admit who I am because I'll always, I raise my bar because I try to do my best. Then I wish that all the time reflecting myself after the project, after something, I wish always I could be better. But because I have been making an effort, but I could not usually reach the level I initially wanted. So that time, it's more like the baby steps for me to like please myself, like praise myself and admire myself. Okay, so you couldn't hit the bar, but just you did that, you didn't do that. So yeah, I achieved something. So then I try to build my self-esteem. Also, I don't like making excuse and like blaming someone else, but just I always go back to the initial thought, which is I always feel I am a minority to most of the communities. So this fundamental feeling keeps motivating me to do my job. Because so there are many occasions, when my observation was right, but not heard. At the time, it was demotivating, but I also talk to myself, I shouldn't believe, my voice is always heard. At that time, it's kind of reflection and also the lesson for the next project, what I can do better, and also how I can do how I can do something for my voice to be heard better.
Right. What types of things did you do to like overcome that, to get that feeling that now I love that, like I was right, I know I was right, but I wasn't heard. How did you take those? Maybe it's hard because there were such incremental baby steps, but was there something, I'm just, for listeners can go, I'm going to try this because I understand like what Yuta is saying. I'm the same. I'm in meetings, I have these great ideas and I was right and I wasn't listened to. And for some people, they can just be like, okay, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not going to raise my voice because it's a waste of time. So I'm just going to do the minimum. But I think, that Yuta, when you think about my understanding of Ikigai Authentic's like mission is that those voices get heard.
Right.
So of course, there are the people with privilege, like what they can do. Maybe you have some advice for them, but also for the people who are in those, maybe minority groups or just minority opinion, the unpopular voice, like what can they do to be heard and not give up, especially because they're right?
So, yeah. Have you ever had a similar experience before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the time.
I think like everybody has.
Yeah, it's very relatable.
Yeah. So if I may advise for the people who has privilege, I think, we have to proactively demonstrate inclusion. So, which means, having said that, so everybody's biased. I am biased too. At the time, so before I realized, who I am giving more eye contact to, then, I easily can give eye contact to the people I know, like probably in the meeting, if I find you, Jennifer, I am so comfortable talking to you, then other people might think, oh, like, he likes Jennifer, discussing with Jennifer. That's why, but like, he might not like me. Then at the time, it's quite unconscious, but just I'm talking to you because I feel more confident and comfortable to make presentation in that meeting.
Right.
So
and I'm sitting there nodding, and so it becomes this virtuous or perhaps vicious cycle, right?
Right. That's why my advice at the first step is to give eye contact to people you are not comfortable to look at. So then, I think, people, we can demonstrate our inclusive leadership, like inclusion to everyone, everybody feels, oh, my voice is heard. And so I got attention from the speakers. Then the people, people who feel frustrated, their voice is not heard. My advice is to, first, not to blame ourselves. Like, sometimes, we feel frustrated, and so I was there, but just in the beginning, I felt, I couldn't, my voice was not heard because my opinion is not great enough, or the way I present was not so efficient.
Something wrong with me, right?
Yeah, probably
how I delivered it is like the problem.
To do a bit, but just it's not the only case. So we also have to, we stop like blaming ourselves, but like, so we improve what we can do better, but just also we also good to realize that is the reality. Then we try something different to speak up. That was my advice.
Right. Yeah, like, so don't take all the personal blame on yourself, right? That it's about something which is wrong with you, or like how you've delivered your opinion. I think that's a great piece of advice, because I see a lot of people who are minorities and not actually minorities, but their opinions and their perspectives on the world are not like in the dominant group. So they feel, oh, it's because of like my presentation skills, or I'm not assertive enough, or I can't, talk this right language of business. But that doesn't mean that your opinion is not valid, right? Yeah, and it doesn't mean that your opinion is not useful and not impactful. So what don't stop that belief in yourself is kind of what I'm taking away. And I love what you've said as well, like as a really practical thing to just make eye contact with different people. It's a little bit difficult on Zoom, but when, using different people's names or asking for different people. And it reminded me when I came back from my second childcare leave, and our company had done huge hiring and lots of acquisitions during that time. And I just looked around the room and I felt like so isolated, so alone. I was like, I don't know any of these people. They don't know who I am. And of course, this was, 7 years ago. So it's at different times, but I just said, okay, I'm going to network internally. And I picked 3 random people and invited them for lunch. And then at the end of that lunch, I said, who should I invite for lunch? Please, each of you give me a name. And then it so it got me around the organization. But the interesting thing was many people said, oh, I've never talked to anyone outside of my team. I didn't know this person. So actually, because I was brave, I don't know, to be vulnerable and say, I'm just going to invite really random people from this company to lunch with me, I was actually able to bring other people together. So maybe that's something about also use my privilege, because it wasn't such a brave thing for me to do, because I like going for lunch with strangers.
It's good food.
Yeah, right. And maybe you have a nice conversation, maybe you don't, but I was solving my problem for myself, but through that also creating expansion for other people who were able to meet other people in the organization. So it's like what we were talking before, how many people are living very small and struggling with the same issue. And until one person says, actually, I feel the same way. I don't know anyone either. Thanks for setting it up. Yeah, just reminding me of that.
I really admire you. You are very, very proactively connecting with people at that time. This is not something that everybody can do easily.
Yeah. So it's back to those skill sets we were talking about before. What are the things that you do, naturally and well, and maybe for someone else it's a big deal. Right. So I know we're coming to the end of our time together, and I've already asked my secret question of what's the question I should have asked you. But Yuta, do you have any final message for the listeners of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai? Anything you want to share as a takeaway for people who want to live more authentically or bring more authenticity into their company as well?
All right. First, thank you for having me. It was very, very, pleasant to chat with you like this, and I hope people enjoy. So, if I may, my advice is, how to be authentic is, and also with Ikigai is that, first, you think, what is our first, think, what privilege we have, of course, many people, there are many people struggling with the situations at this moment, but just, everybody has, our own privilege. So this time, which give us more confidence and self-esteem as well. Mm-hmm. So privilege is one of the things, one of our strengths as well. Also, the other one is more to realize, we are always a minority depending on the communities and the group and the society. At this time, stop, blaming ourselves more. So we accept who we are. And then also, like I said before, just first be selfish and also stop worrying about what other people think. Then we realize, we can eventually cultivate, our mission and the Ikigai. This is my advice.
Love it. I'm working with a coach at the moment, and talking about stop caring about what other people think. And his name's Jim Fortin, and he just says, everyone is going to judge you. Everyone is always going to judge you. So definitely, you can hold yourself back, and as you said, make yourself smaller, fit into these boxes, or you can just go and live your life. Because they're going to judge you anyway. You're going to judge you in the box. They're going to judge you out of the box. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. So it must be true. That's the icky part of Ikigai, is just go out there and do it, because you'll, as you said, right? You're judged if you do. You're judged if you don't. I work for a big corporate. I work for myself. People all these different things. You live in Japan. You don't live in Japan. Whatever you do, everyone's going to judge you. How much do you want to care about that and let that hold you? So our time here is fleeting and short.
Yeah, I like that, because then like, their judgment is out of our control.
Exactly. Yeah. So I love it. Let's live Ikigai authentic lives. I'm excited. I'm excited for what's coming up. And I'm very excited for your holiday as well, Yuta. So I hope that you get all of your work finished. Thank you so much for making the time to chat with me today. Thank you for being a regular listener. It was so lovely to hear, like, oh, I listened to this one and this one and this one. So it's great to know.
I feel always positive when I'm listening to your channel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, there you go. It doesn't come better testimonial than that for a listener to become a guest and inspire other people as well. So I hope everyone had a great time listening to Yuta's story, and all his website and everything will be in the show notes below. And maybe we'll link to some of the other, his favorite episodes that he was talking about as well. So thank you so much, Yuta. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.